Ponyo is fundamentally a film about innocence. Genuine and true childhood innocence, as opposed to the paternalistic and overbearing attempts to control and shape it. There have been readings of this film that show Fujimoto, Ponyo's rather well-intentioned but controlling father, as a kind of Walt Disney figure, an emblem of a kind of overprotective idealization of childhood that very much wants to keep the child in a certain place, that wants the child to enjoy childhood but only within very strict parameters. It's a kind of false freedom. There is no way to know if that is intentional, if this film is an intentional rebuttal to the idealization of childhood, the specific idealization of childhood in the work of Disney. But it is very true that this is Miyazaki's version of The Little Mermaid, and as such, it is kind of inevitably a response to Disney's Little Mermaid. Both are, of course, significantly different from the Hans Christian Andersen story, which is very adult in a way that both films are not. The Hans Christian Andersen story being about the mermaid being so consumed by this desperate, fiery longing that she leaves her home and attempts to connect with the prince on the land, and she is rejected. He does not love her. And she ultimately cannot become a human. She cannot gain a soul, which is very important for Andersen. Very much as this Christian piety to the original. And she turns into sea foam. Both modern mermaid films, this and the Disney Little Mermaid, are significantly more innocent. But the Disney film is still very much a film about love and romance and this wild adolescent desire. And I kind of like it for that. But it is a kind of wish fulfillment, a kind of perhaps distorting wish fulfillment. Ariel's is not the most smart person at the start. She is a hormonal teenager, and she just follows those adolescent desires, and ultimately she gets what she wants. Miyazaki's film is significantly more innocent. It's not about romantic love. It's about a very young boy and a very young girl, prepubescent, but growing at the same time. All children mature. A difference between, say, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old might not seem a lot to an adult, but it certainly seems a lot to the child themselves. And as the child slowly grows up, forming these connections is important, and these connections are innocent for Miyazaki, but there is also something a bit uncontrolled about that nonetheless. And the film is ultimately about relinquishing this kind of deep parental control. Ponyo is arguably the most gentle Studio Ghibli film. Even a film like Totoro has quite a bit of darkness in it. There is the specter of the mother's debilitating illness and the despair about whether she might possibly die. It can also be a deeply melancholy film at times in a way that Ponyo is not. There is more than a hint of the Wordsworthian ideal of the child here. The hope of the child as this undiminished figure, closer to heaven in a way, less tainted by the ruinous passions of life on this planet. So one could possibly say this is a bit of an idealizing film, but it's nonetheless a film that is emphatic that the child needs to be free to explore their innocent perceptions of the world on their own terms, as opposed to this paternalistic, controlling, strict, almost in a way perverse ideal of childhood innocence, which the film is firmly against. As opposed to, say, the Disney Little Mermaid, which has a pretty clear and familiar structure, and as people have criticized it for, Ariel basically has no agency in the second half of the film after she gets on land. Ponyo is a film all about exploring, all about these ordinary moments of childhood wonder, of going wherever you want and not really knowing what awaits you, but not really caring because you're young and the world is fresh and everything seems exciting. And Miyazaki wants to honor that purity of this youngest stage of childhood, which he does not believe should be controlled by someone like Fujimoto. I don't want to say that there isn't any darkness whatsoever in Ponyo. You can certainly find some if you look for it, especially with the more adult characters. There are those concerns of, say, financial anxieties and struggles of moving and rearing children. But a lot of those concerns are kept on the outskirts of the film, and this is a film that pulsates with gentleness and kindness. And it is interesting that Miyazaki chose to make this. Many of the late period Miyazaki films are deeply burdened by the sorrows of a fragmented world that Miyazaki feels is scarred with violence and collapsing in on of itself. The Boy and the Heron and The Wind Rises, Miyazaki's two final films that he makes after this, are different in many ways, but they are fundamentally concerned with the same question, which is there a way to create meaningfully and ethically in a broken world? Is it possible to maintain a sense of beauty and a sense of harmony in a world that is so violent and brutal and exploitative? To what extent is that even possible? And both those films are deeply ambivalent on these questions, on this one singular issue. Even Howl's Moving Castle, Miyazaki's film immediately before this, which he took over from Mamoru Hosoda, the then young Mamoru Hosoda, whose work on the film Miyazaki was not happy about. That film is relatively warm by Ghibli standards, but it is also a film deeply gripped with Miyazaki's anxieties about the invasion of Iraq and about military imperialism in the 21st century. Ponyo, conversely, is more innocent. It's not that it's a film about nothing, it's a film about a lot of things. It's a deeply ecological film. It's a film about warmth and friendship and childhood connection. But it is a film that has a more hopeful ideal for society. It reminds me a bit of Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale, a late period romance by Shakespeare, wherein we are given this somber, icy, melancholy world, and then by the end everything is revitalized, miraculously so. There's a sense of warmth, of springtime, of renewal flowing back into the land. And that is what I get when I think of Ponyo. It is Miyazaki's version of that, his little moment of hope, of genuine childhood innocence. The kind of innocence that, for Miyazaki, is only the province of very young children, even younger than Chihiro. That, for Miyazaki, is nonetheless not silly or fatuous, but hopeful and beautiful and worth venerating. And that is ultimately what this film is. It is not simply a gentle masterpiece, it is a masterpiece that venerates a kind of gentleness and warmth and uncaring, unpretentious kindness and goodness toward one another. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and if you want to see more videos just like this one before anyone else. Ponyo is a very sweet and heartwarming film in of itself, and it's really interesting to look at in the scope of the much darker place that Miyazaki has increasingly gone to in the last few decades of his life. Not this nihilism necessarily, but this existential uncertainty about the future of humanity and the future of art in an uncertain world. Ponyo is him letting himself dream, and I think that can be a beautiful thing. Adios, comrades.